It's not even January yet, and the left is already thinking to itself, oh my God, what did we do? It goes to the old saying, be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. We know for a fact wishes are brutal, unforgiving things. They burn your tongue the moment they're spoken, and you can never take them back. And ironically, now on the right, in the name of quote-unquote fairness, we have a bunch of so-called conservatives asking for more government control, to issue some type of a federal ID so that we have ID-based voting, so that we don't have a repeat of what happened this year with all of the alleged fake votes. And that is, of course, the common theme of the last 4 years, because we have heard over and over again the last president, Donald Trump, talk about how unfair this is, or how unfair he was treated this way, or how unfair the media portrayed him, as if life is fair. Worship of the state is the worship of force. The worst evils which mankind ever had to endure were inflicted by governments, and now we have people that for 8 years under Obama were talking about executive orders and unconstitutionality, asking for those exact things. But in today's video, I'm going to show you an article from CNN where they're already imploding. I used this image in the lower left yesterday to show you that to a lot of the country, the youth, they don't understand what the argument is. The last president, Donald Trump, was a Democrat for 20, 25, 30 years. Only found his Republican nature under Obama. Joe Biden, for 47 years, was part of the Blue Dog caucus of the Democrats, about as conservative as you could get. Him, Joe Manchin, to some extent years ago, Tom Daschle, those guys. And the question, S.E. Cupp, upper left, was asking, is Joe Biden going to dance with the one who brung him? See, that's an old phrase that was used for, is he now going to deliver to the people who elected him? But in the article that talks about this, they really reveal who it was that put Biden over the top. So I'm going to read this article for you. Funny thing about S.E. Cupp, she spent a lot of time on Fox News and even on a show called Red Eye, and talked about how the right was misunderstood. And now she's over on CNN trying to eviscerate the right after Trump got elected. She's one of these Manhattan Fox News people that made you believe for years and years and years she was a conservative. But anyway, let's get to the article. President-elect Joe Biden inherits a deeply divided America. Now, this is S.E. Cupp talking about a David Axelrod written article back from the Obama administration. David Axelrod is the one speaking here. But he also inherits a Democratic Party that is divided on how to tackle a wide array of issues, from immigration to healthcare, criminal justice to defense. Can they come together to confront a possible Republican Senate? Can they deliver on their so-called mandate without further alienating the voters they lost? In this week's What Comes Next, David Axelrod, former advisor to President Barack Obama, and Jess McIntosh, a Democratic strategist, tackle those questions in our discussion. But Axelrod's op-ed, listen to this. It's not even January, guys. Listen to what's being said by the Democrats. If you're a Democrat, this is a time of great relief, but not necessarily much joy. Sure, you captured the big prize, defeating a president with autocratic tendencies, whose continuation in office many feared, with good reason, posed an existential threat to the institution's norms and rule of law from the foundation of our democracy. Joe Biden won the support of more than 80 million Americans, marking the 7th time in 8 elections that Democrats have claimed the national popular vote. He added 5 states Hillary Clinton lost, including 2, Arizona and Georgia, where Democrats had not won at the presidential level since 1990s. All good news. But, beneath that glittering top line Republicans had an unexpectedly good election day. You see, they're already admitting this. Encouraged by polling that proved too rosy, Democrats had high hopes of seizing a U.S. Senate majority, enlarging their edge in the U.S. House of Representatives, and taking control of half a dozen or more legislatures across the country. Critical in a year when the states will be redrawing legislative and congressional maps for the next decade. None of that happened. You don't know how big a deal that is, guys. You don't know how big a deal that is. While Biden won the presidency, it was Donald Trump and the conservative movement who had the coattails. Mired in scandal, controversy, and an epic pandemic, Trump nevertheless won over 74 million votes, over 10 million more votes than he received in 2016. While it wasn't enough to save the embattled president, Republicans swept along in his wake, narrowed the Democratic advantage in the U.S. House by at least 12 seats so far, captured control of 2 more state legislative chambers in New Hampshire, and are favored to maintain the majority in the U.S. Senate, pending 2 critical runoffs in Georgia. Unless Democrats can pull off 2 upsets, not likely. Many of his appointments, Biden's appointments, will be at the mercy, and his agenda, of Mitch McConnell and the Republicans. They're already admitting that Biden's going to come in pretty much as a lame duck. They don't even bother to mention the courts here. They don't have the courts, and they're not going to have any kind of a mandate in the House or the Senate. Wait until you read this, guys. Buoyed by significant gains among suburban voters and strong showings in cities, Biden won many of the most populous and prosperous metropolitan areas by larger margins than Hillary, but Trump commanded 80% of the nation's counties. Those divisions and the constitutionally mandated system by which we elect presidents and apportion senators and members of Congress means that Democrats may have the most voters, but Republicans, by activating their base, can maintain legislative power and remain, I think, more than competitive in the future electoral college races for the White House. This is what I was talking about with apportionment, guys. The South is getting more and more and more powerful. Texas, Florida. And this is a great contrast. For Democrats, the sobering reality is that, despite his 7 million vote lead nationally, Biden captured the presidency by a combined 43,692 votes across 3 battleground states. Without his narrow wins in Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin, the race for electoral votes would have been tied. Now, in Florida, we trounced Biden by almost 400,000 votes. Add in Texas, and we have 1 million. You see, it got done in Florida. It got done in North Carolina. It got done in Ohio and in Texas. There were some states that dropped the ball, and that's what this is really about. And looking back, and here's the key, guys. Here's the absolute key statement of this whole article. And looking back, Biden was likely the only Democrat running in 2020 who could have pulled it off. Now, think about that for a minute. Look at all of the options they were putting out. They had Tulsi Gabbard, they had Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, all of these different minority slices of the pie. And they realized the country was becoming so much more conservative than they thought. They had to put up the most conservative Democrat they could find. They had to put up the most conservative Democrat they could find. White-haired, white and male, steeped in the working-class culture of his native Scranton, Pennsylvania, moderate in tone and politics, and enormously empathetic because of his own horrific life struggles, Biden was a difficult target for the race-baiting reactionary Trump, blah, 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 blah. And he goes on here to talk about, how socialism failed. and how only Biden's moderate voice gave him the ability to squeak out a win. And how it was, you ready for this? White women with a college degree favored Biden by double digits. Every other minority group, Trump made gains in. African Americans, Latinos, especially here in Florida. And he goes on to talk about how, with the way this went down, the Democrats have no hope of making any inroads. I mean, the far left, the socialist, progressive, I shouldn't say socialist. The DC liberals have no hope of making any inroads in the next 2 to 4 years. They're not going to win anyone else over because of the move toward conservatism in this country. This was a huge win for the idea of conservatism. And that's what this really needs to all be about. If you are a supporter of conservative ideals and you are against what the DC liberal progressive wants to do, this was a giant win. It's going to give that idea more power in the branch of government that creates law, meaning the House and the Senate. The courts are a done deal for a generation. And the best the left could do, the very best they could do, was find the single most moderate Democrat left and run him. Seriously. There are people out there right now buying stock in Tums and antacids because of Joe Biden. This whole nonsense about him resigning, Kamala Harris, that ain't going to work. Be guaranteed he'd be a one-term president if that happened. That'd be the end of him. If that were the case, they would have run her. They realize that idea fails, that it's a marginalized idea. All of their little big tent slices, none of it gets the job done. None of it gets the job done. And I hate to say it, guys, on the right, Trump did it to himself. Trump did it to himself this time. Because he spent 4 years talking about how he didn't need anybody. How it was just him. He didn't need the Republican Party. How it was just about him. And when you demonize people that you're going to need in 4 years to help you get elected, this is going to be the result, guys. And you can't say he didn't do it. He was not a team player. And maybe that's the reason you liked him, and that's fine. But understand, he joined a team. He didn't run as an independent and win. You see, that's what Chavez did. Chavez ran outside the two-party system they had down there, and he won 60% of the vote in a three-way race. Trump decided he needed to be part of a team to get nominated and then get elected, but then once he got into office, he decided to tell his teammates to go take a flying leap. How does that work on a football team? How does that work on any other team? You see, it's a team sport, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. 3 branches of government, 2 parties. And this is what the price is. But believe me, what the Democrats lost was their soul. They absolutely traded their soul for this. And they know it. And even David Axelrod is admitting it. So, anyway, I will leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe.